And we are live. It was very nice of Evie Mux to flip the screen on me when we went live. We have Laura Cunningham of the Western Watersheds organization joining. And Laura and I go back many years working on the Point Reyes issue. Oh man, she is a wealth of knowledge. It's always a pleasure to have her on. And Laura Cunningham was back out at Point Reyes National Seashore Tuesday, September 9th, 2025. So very, very recently. And some of you have already seen the footage that Jack Gescheit filmed and that I shared. And today we're going to look at some of Laura's photos that she took, some topics that she would like to spend some time on. And if we have time, we'll look at some more of that video footage that Jack provided. Having said all of that, I'll allow Laura to speak. Say good morning to everyone, Laura. We have a live audience.
Yeah, good morning. I'm California Director at Western Watersheds Project, and I really thank Skylar for deeply diving into all of this coastal prairie restoration cattle over the years. I mean, you've been with us from the start, so really good to be here.
Oh, thank you. I have a full playlist featuring Laura on my channel. If anyone wants to go as we walk through Point Reyes and she helps explain what we're looking at. And we're going to kind of do that again today. Only to me, there's a theme over all of this that it's been bad for a long time. It's continued to be bad. and perhaps the only way for it to stop being bad is to get rid of what I believe is causing it to be bad, which makes it very frustrating. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. One of the darkest spots with this agreement that was negotiated is that cattle are going to be brought back in for targeted grazing, which, if you take what I just said and think about it, that's the last thing that you need to have happen. Laura?
Yeah, it's like taking your main stressor, the main threat to the native plants and sensitive species, and then we're going to use the stressor to try to heal the land. It's a little crazy. So, but it's unfortunately that's the decision. It was over my head. We had politicians involved and Representative Huffman. So it got complicated, and we're just going to have to move forward and deal with it and try to limit the use of this targeted grazing. They also call it conservation grazing, which is
Right.
like, you know, that's a misnomer. It's like an oxymoron to me, but we'll move forward and deal with it.
I was hoping I was speaking to another one of our allies. I was like about the weed pulling process that might take place with volunteers and where that would take place, and if after that weed pulling does take place, will this be active restoration after the weeds are pulled? Will actual native plants be put there to help claim back that land, or are the weeds that have a tendency to be the first ones to come back, whether you pull them or not, are they going to grow back? And then the cattle are going to be brought in to shorten, manage uh, that vegetation, a self fulfilling prophecy of a need that only takes place because you didn't do it right in the first place. But if this continues, I'm really, the thought that came to my mind while I was on the show yesterday with Jack was, my God, they're going to make sure that restoration fails so that they can show the world, oh, we actually do need cattle.
What I'm hoping is to, come in at this from a scientific perspective. And it was so good to get out there and, see the land and drive around with everybody. But what they should do, and I'm going to write this up in a report, it may take me another 6 months, but have pilot projects in all these different ranches. We've got a big area. thousands of acres. So one area, leave it as a control. Don't do anything. The weeds will,
Yes.
come up and
Yes.
get big. Another
Absolutely.
area, okay, do your targeted grazing. Yes, do like a little fenced pilot project, do the targeted grazing there. Another area, do hand pulling
Yes.
and then maybe some active restoration where you've collected local seeds of bunch grasses and wildflowers and plant them back in there, no grazing. Another area, do a pilot project where you have a prescribed fire or cultural fire and then see how that manages the weeds. We bumped into Dave Press
Oh, I'm sorry.
in a parking lot with a bunch of Park Service people. Yeah, and no, and he actually said the elk are all loving to go to that Woodward fire burn patch that's now growing. They love it. The elk, and that's I had predicted that if you have a burn, it brings back a lot of sprouts of plants, and the elk, it's like, buffet for them. So anyway,
Yet
back to have a bunch of different pilot projects and then see what works.
that's exactly what I just emailed to our ally. I don't want to mention the person's name without getting permission first. You got to have these different plots with different situations and observe. The power of observation, observation science, and once you see the results, then you can try and understand what may or may not have caused you to get the results. Because if you don't know anything about this and you just say, oh, well, elk are going to bring back plants while livestock are going to prevent the return of those plants, like, well, that doesn't make any sense. They both walk around with hooves and eat plants. And yet there is a very important difference. And we're going to get into that a little bit today with that image you took of the black-tailed deer. By the way, we have a little bit of Laura's coming to us via satellite, so forgive us for the small delays. Um, Sometimes there'll be a little dead air while I wait for her to respond. And I would like to say good morning to Paula. I would like to say good morning to John, John Spear, who enthusiastically welcomes you to the show. DC from the Rev, that's Derek, who has helped me get a lot of footage. And John Spear says, I like what Eric Mulvar said at the California Wildlife Conservation Board meeting, challenging the false claims about targeted grazing. Oh, well, good for Eric for doing that. I got to tell you,
But yeah, at this tour,
sorry,
oh, sorry, there's
there's
that
that delay I
delay.
was talking about.
I was just going to say, yeah, what I want to really, on our coastal prairie tour, I really wanted to quell people's worries about the explosion of weeds that's
Hmm.
happening with the removal of a lot of the dairy cows. And this is, again, people need to be educated about ecological succession. I don't think we teach this anymore, and we certainly are not teaching it to the range people in the Park Service.
Hmm.
And I wonder if TNC knows about this too. But classically, we have plants that are adapted in the Mediterranean region of Europe to heavy disturbance of cattle grazing. And they're 10,000 years they've been adapted to this. So they'll come in on bare ground, and that includes bowl thistle and a lot of like goat grass, foxtail fescue grass, and so we're seeing, a lot of the weeds grow up when you take the stressor, the disturbance causer off the land. And I've had people already start to panic. And, you mentioned it. Oh my God, there's all these weeds now. Everything's horrible. Well, that's the start of healing when we get the weeds. And then succession means other plants that may not be native will then come in gradually, over the years as the soil starts to heal. And our ultimate goal is to get a climax native perennial bunchgrass coastal prairie community, which takes the least disturbance. That type of plant vegetation does not like disturbance at all. So I think what we have to be patient with is we're going to see a process here of healing, and it's going to take decades at Point Reyes. And that's the point Eric made, is targeted grazing is going to keep setting us back
Thank you.
because it's going to keep those heavy hooves and grazing mouths, disturbing the soil again. And what we want is no bare ground, no erosion, and we want a duff, an organic layer to start building up. We want the mosses and lichens to start coming back, but I think I sent you pictures, so we'll see that in a
Hmm.
bit in my photos.
Indeed, we will. And I have as a banner here, one of my notes for us to talk about today is something that I heard you mention in your tour. You actually spoke positively about wild oats, also known as slender oats, which I have very negative feelings for because it's just dominating California, just dominating California. But you talk about succession, and we at least covered it for 1 week in my natural sciences courses, and it was fascinating. God, I wish we would have spent more time on it. And but the theme is patience. If you want to see succession take place, we as humans have to be patient and let succession take place. It's not overnight, unless you were to do the active intervention and just pull the weeds out and stick new plants in. But I heard you refer to the slender oats as a pioneer species, right? That they're actually doing something
No, I,
relatively positive in the soil, but that's only compared to when it's complete and utter garbage, such as in this shot. So you start with absolutely garbage, and then something tries to come back, and then something tries to come back after that.
yeah, I didn't refer to wild oats as a pioneer plant,
Oh,
but
thank God.
wild oats is actually a late successional annual introduced grass. So, um, it's actually a better grass to have. It's like an indicator. So, bull thistle and poison hemlock are the pioneers. They come in when there's
Mm.
just nothing. They're unpalatable. They like the bare dirt and the disturbed, eroded ground. So there's all these other species of introduced grasses that will then come in later. And at the higher up in this cycle of succession, you get wild oats. So wild oats is a positive indicator of you're going in the right direction. And at Point Reyes, you actually see wild oats on some ungrazed roadsides. So
Hmm.
it means the soil is healing and you've had less cattle. And then the stage above that is to get the native perennial bunch grasses in, and that's a much longer stage. So to me, wild oats are not great, but they're a positive indicator of you're going in the right direction towards soil building and less erosion. I don't think we'll ever get rid of them, frankly. They're just our Mediterranean climate is so parallel to the European Mediterranean climate. I think they're here to stay, but that's where I want to have plots of active restoration where we pull weeds, even if they're wild oats, we pull those out and then we actively plant bunch grasses. And maybe there's ways to inoculate soil with lichens and mosses. I mean, that's a whole new thing now too. But so there's stages that I have tried to write this in comments for since 2018 to the
Hmm.
Park Service, and I think I've influenced them a little bit, but the process right now is not transparent because I don't see them actively wanting to restore the native deep-rooted perennial bunch grasses yet. I don't see any talk of that.
I want to apologize for everyone for misspeaking. I knew you referred to them positively. I should not have said you referred to them as pioneer. But what you're talking about is it's at least an improvement over what we're seeing next to this photo of a cow amongst bull thistle and other thistle. And how interesting that
Right.
what I'm going to refer to as like just a really, really problematic plant uh, is the pioneer species. So you start with something that even livestock don't want as the pioneer species. So you have to work up from there before you get to something such as the wild oats. And then once you get to the wild oats, you can think about, oh, let's now replace the wild oats with something even better. But can you explain the relationship between
Right.
livestock, the proliferation of plants with livestock that the livestock don't even want?
Yeah, well, it all goes back to, the domestication of cattle and sheep and goats and horses in Europe and Eurasia, and how over 10,000 years of domestication where people were actually fencing them in, and there were areas of complete blowout bombed bare dirt. Plants
Mm,
over there adapted to this.
mm,
And we don't have that in the California grassland. I mean, there may have been areas where elk 1,000 years ago made trails, wallows where they could roll in the dust, areas around water holes. And there are native plants that are pioneers that are adapted to this. But the Eurasian plants are so well adapted to this, and they came in literally on the fur of Spanish cows, the galleys sailing across the ocean. And there's evidence that when the Spanish landed in Baja California and came up in the 1700s, the weeds like wild oats even started to invade California before the arrival of Europeans, maybe
really?
10 or 20 years before that. They were already making adobe bricks when they got to Los Angeles, and they're just already filled with wild oats.
Huh.
So these things are just aggressively adapted to pioneer disturbed areas and then take over. And so I think we're always going to have to deal with some of them, but we can try to start getting rid of the worst pioneer and early successional species that are not good wildlife habitat. Elk don't eat them, cows don't eat them, they don't make good cover, like the bull thistle, um, some of these other, like Medusa head grass. I mean, they
Mm,
kind of have names that sound like they're
ripgut brome
inedible. So, yep, ripgut's one.
doesn't sound too
And
yummy.
sometimes that does require carefully going and actually snipping the seed heads off of things in patches and then putting them in trash bags and not letting the seeds continue to build up in the soil. I mean, there's huge amounts of work that could be done, and maybe prescribed fire in some way could also tip the balance away from um, some of the bull thistle. And but the idea of using cattle to get rid of bull thistle when cattle won't eat it, I
Thank
guess
you.
their idea is they might trample it down, but then the seeds are still there and they're just going to come up the next year. So
I have spent considerable time filming when a bull thistle seeds are ready to be spread, and there's so many. It's incredible. I mean, trampling that into the soil is helpful. Come on, it's a it's a
yeah,
distribution system. Um, I
right.
I want to talk about the weed pulling and burning. I actually have it as a note here up on the screen because weeds do things under the soil. They affect the soil, and I wanted to ask, what approach would you use if you could do whatever you wanted to? Would you go out and burn it, and then when they try to come back, pull? Would you pull so that you remove the entire plant, including the roots, and burn them off to the side so that you just completely obliterate it, except for, of course, the seeds that just never go away, as you already pointed out? Or is going ahead and just starting with a burn going to be a nice approach to kind of fighting against all of these seeds that we were just talking about?
I think what I would want to do is go back again to the different pilot projects, because this is a
Mm,
huge opportunity to study what works and what doesn't in a very large area. I mean, I've participated in restoration projects over a couple of acres, but this is like tens of, you know, ten thousands of acres. So One area, again, I would just have as a control, let it go. That's the
Mm.
passive restoration where we don't graze it, don't disturb it. It'll have weeds. It'll take a long time for the weeds to kind of die down because they actually thrive on disturbance. So once you remove the disturbance, in this case cows, they'll actually die away and other species will start to move in, seed themselves in, and you'll get a succession. But that's going to take a really long time. So another pilot project is actually pulling weeds up disturbs the soil too and keeps the cycle going. So
Huh.
unfortunately, the best way is to get in there and snip them, crop them off and leave the roots. They're annuals,
Really?
they're dead seeds, and then put them in a garbage bag and then take that. And some people will use they'll take the seed heads after they've snipped them off and have one area that's dedicated as a mulch pile, and they'll pile them up as mulch. And then those seed heads are concentrated in one area
Hmm.
and don't get to spread out and seed. And sometimes the heat of a big mulch pile will start to kill the seeds. So that's one way, like one pilot project, you could try that. A different pilot project on a different ranch, you could try prescribed fire on the weeds and see what that does. And that will have probably different results. And this is what I'm interested to study, like how, which species will come in after you burn it, what will survive. Some weeds are going to survive that. I mean, these things are tough, man. I think bull
Yeah.
thistle seeds
Yeah.
probably will survive a burn, a light surface fire that's pretty cool, and then they'll just come back. So that's why I kind of like the idea of the active restoration the best, like in a different plot. And again, whatever method you choose to get rid of the bull thistle and all the Mediterranean grasses that are coming in there, then you want to collect seed. And this is where tern can grow, Idaho fescue, all the different wildflowers in the nursery, get little pots, and then come in and actively plant them in those
Mm.
areas. And you'll need to come back and weed around them. But after many, many years, that will start this little island of a native coastal prairie, and that can then start to grow. But you can't graze it. You can't come in and just put cattle on it.
Hmm.
You've got to have like some not disturbed soil to get back to something that's going to take 100 years to get back to. Those coastal prairies are old growth
Hmm.
grassland. So we're not going to get redwood forests in 5 years, right? You got to be
Right.
patient, but it's kind of nice to push it and help it go faster to get to that state.
So I have a couple of bullet points to wrap up some of the great points you just said. One, we came back to the idea of observation. These plots. Uh, it's about looking, learn, let the land tell you what's going to be successful, and follow the
Yeah.
land's lead. Um, Something else was the concern. It's not going to happen overnight. We're going to need years. Will humans be patient? Probably not. Will the propaganda machine look at the fact that it doesn't happen overnight and say, look, this isn't working? And three, how can we even get to that point if they're constantly bringing the cattle back in? I mean, it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
Uh, Corinne says, good morning. Thanks for being here. And John Spear says, I have read that targeted grazing can use other animals, e.g., goats, rather than cattle. Has the Nature Conservancy stated if it's planning specifically to use cattle and why? They did, didn't they? I'm not going to promote
That's
goats, by the way.
I mean, I know you and I have talked quite a lot about goats. I mean, other people have told me one of the pilot projects, little fenced area, should be goats because I think this was Jim Coda. He said the goats, when they eat the weeds, their digestive acids kill seeds more and so the poop doesn't just promote seeds. And cattle often will eat plants. They go through the gut pooped out, and then the seeds are still alive. So, I mean, that's a I would be open to one little area having goats, even though you and I know goats are just like the most like they just gnaw everything down to
It's just
nothing.
devastation.
But yeah, I mean, in the
Let me,
interest of like comparing, it'll be interesting to see.
I I had I almost said luxury. I had the misfortune of living in a place that's environment was so bad that anything I did was going to be an improvement. It just an onslaught of non-native invasive species that was just grazed with goats annually, and the problem only got worse every single year. So I would find spots that they didn't graze the goats and start doing my own projects. And here comes the observation. I I had the opportunity to do my own study plots, rogue study plots, and observe what takes place. And one thing concerning what Jim Coda said is I realized it's a moot point whether or not the goats render the seeds inert in the digestive system because there's so many seeds. I was collecting seeds in order to try and grow them at home, see if they came out of the goat poop. And while I was picking up goat poop, I know people are going to think that's weird, but I'm just going to call it science. Picking up goat poop. I'm picking it up, and I'm picking it up out of piles of seeds of the invasive species that I'm going to conduct the study on. I mean, the goats don't get rid of it. There's so many seeds, and half the time they're just knocking the plants down or getting it in their fur or in their hooves or speeding up the process of it getting to the soil. Worrying about whether or not the seeds that come out through the digestive system is going to change the situation is kind of a distraction.
Yeah, and I have to say, I was on this same trip last week. I went to the new national monument, Berryessa Snow Mountain, up in the North Coast Range. It's like north of, it's kind of near Clear Lake. And there is an area called the Cache Creek Natural Area that has Tule elk. I didn't see any, and no cows. And it's amazing. And so you hike in
Mm,
here, there's no grazing. The grass is tall, it's dominated by wild oats. But when you look around, there are a lot of native bunch grasses. There's purple needlegrass,
mm,
there's bluegrass, little bluegrass bunches, California onion grass. And so I don't know how long that's been not grazed by cattle and grazed by tule elk, but the weeds were at a late successional stage. They were pretty tall, and wild oats, yes, dominated, but you were getting the perennial bunch grasses coming in very gradually, and it was just beautiful. And it's a slow process. And this was passive restoration. Nobody was planting native things in there. It was just after decades. I mean, this is a decades old natural area. I think it's the state for Tule elk. They were coming back. So, I mean,
mm,
it's going to be patience is key. And one of my problems is right now the Nature Conservancy and the Park Service are not being transparent. I
mm.
know for a fact because I've seen this on Point Reyes National Seashore Association. They are
Oh God.
already going out there and digging soil pits and measuring like ecological site descriptions, which is what I recommended the Park Service do in all my letters. And they're doing it, but we're not really hearing about it. What are you guys finding? Can the
Mm,
public volunteer and participate? So, I mean, I'm going to be writing my restoration report and my measurements of baseline coastal prairie relicts. And meanwhile, they're doing something completely different. And so I'm not sure how we're going to meet in the future and get this, plan going. But supposedly, a targeted grazing plan by the Nature Conservancy and Park Service will be public for comment at
oh
some
brother.
point, maybe a year. I hope. We'll see.
Yeah. Here comes the pessimist in me. The comment period that makes people think that they're involved. Uh, John Spears says I wasn't necessarily advocating for goats. I was just asking. I'm sorry if I sounded like I was attacking you, John. I've been documenting the destruction of goats for the last 7 years, so it's a sore spot for me. But I was not. I used your comment as an opportunity. It was not backlash at you specifically. I appreciate the comments. In fact, everyone who is viewing, use the opportunity to have Laura here to ask your questions because it is a great opportunity. Before we move on, and I take this image off the screen, just want everyone to understand this is right now with cattle. So, this idea that weeds are going to come if we don't have cattle, just get this out of your head. And the other image that I had up there
Exactly.
was showing the environmental protection zones, which I have just released a video about, which shows that they put those signs up in 2021 to try and keep people away from ranches. And I don't know what they were trying to protect, but it seems to have been non native plants that have flourished in those spots. And you saw them on your tour. Did you see anything positive in there? I think I heard you
Yeah.
say. I think I heard you say that some native plants are trying to fight through it, or no? Am I wrong?
Not in there. And the signs were all along the roadside next to ranch buildings. And then it
Right,
was
specifically.
containing, bowl thistle and yeah, so I think it's just to keep people from parking next to houses. That's
Such an
so it's not environmental protection.
such an interesting point that they only did that in front of ranches. Well, you're not interested in protecting the environment in the other areas? That's interesting.
No.
Ray Cooper says I shared a video with Laura about Umnak Island, a remote place where abandoned cattle live amongst the caribou and number around 8,000. Would be interesting to study. Wow, that sounds like a big topic. Interesting. Um,
Yeah.
Laura, I've got your images here. You want to start going through your images? This is one of
Yes.
your this is one of your photos, and if I were to zoom out, you guys are at A ranch here, right? A, B, or C
I
over on
believe
that.
so. Yeah.
And I know you
And
said,
so this was
yeah,
really
sorry,
go
go.
ahead.
I I, just, I heard you in the video pointing out, there's not really anything on the ground growing other than those dark spots are small bull thistle, if I'm correct. And otherwise, you're depending on this feeder truck to provide for the cattle to have anything to eat whatsoever. So this is what we're talking about when
Right. This
you need succession. It's like you're starting with this. And there's kind of only one way to go, and that's up. What
Yeah,
else?
I
What
have to
else can
say
we?
that in a week touring around California, I visited all these different public lands managed by Bureau of Land Management, US Forest Service, State of California even. And this Park Service parcel, this ranch right here, is the worst I have seen for range quality for cattle grazing. Just
Hmm,
the worst. I was up in the Sierras, cattle grazed wet meadows, and it was lush. I mean, they were grazed down, but you still had some plants. This was bare dirt and some bull thistles here and there. Bare dirt at the end of the grazing season. They've Cows have grazed off all the annual Mediterranean annual grasses and even some of the weeds. And this was brown bare dirt, like 95% bare dirt, which is like the worst you can get. And this picture is really good. It shows these Jersey cows. I think they're organic, Jersey cow
oh,
ranching,
good.
and there's nothing to eat at the
Look
end
at
of
the
the
ground,
season. There's
people.
exactly, there you go, bare dirt, and some a little bit of chaff left, and so they look pretty fat. So how are they maintaining weight on this bare dirt pasture? Well, they truck in alfalfa hay, probably from the Central Valley, San Joaquin Valley. That's the truck shove all this alfalfa hay in there, and then they drive out in the pasture, and this little fork just throws out a row of alfalfa, and the cows are all just following that truck, man. There's breakfast.
Hmm.
So they're having to supplement the cows because they have eaten off every last shred of plant on this Park Service ranch lease, which the Nature Conservancy is going to take over. These guys they took the buyout, but they're maximizing their profit until the very last minute. And then TNC will take over this devastated bare dirt pasture that's been driven on and, dumped with alfalfa hay. And so this is going to be challenging to, get this back up to coastal prairie, but it can be done. But just, realize when we take the cows off, the weeds will start to come up. You saw it on
Hmm.
the roadsides. And that's the start of healing. The
Hmm.
introduced weeds are actually good to start covering the ground, the bare ground, so that we don't get rainwater and
Hmm.
other erosion, wind erosion. And we just right here, this past year, we're losing our topsoil. It's going into the ocean. So the first
Oh,
stage is weeds, then better weeds, better quality weeds, and then bunch grasses.
so things are so bad that we have to talk about having any sort of ground cover just to try and slow down the erosion and the runoff.
Right.
And I'm zooming in on this shot so that people can see besides the hammered ground. Well, what's that dark stuff? Growing on the horizon. Well, that's bull thistle, unless I'm mistaken. And
Yep. That's the
I
bull
hoped,
thistle.
I anticipated and hoped that you were going to say what you already said because you said it, and I included it in the shame of Point Reyes because it blows my mind. Point Reyes National Seashore, the ranches that are supposed to be models for how to do it properly, are the worst example of land abuse that you've ever seen. Stop,
Still, to
just
this
stop
day.
and think about that, people. The worst, not compared to a pristine environment, compared to other places that are being used for ranching and other forms of land exploitation. This is still worse than those.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I mean, this is public land. If you have your private ranch, you can do whatever you want to it. But this is public land, and this our tax money is going to manage this. And this guy is maximizing his profit right now until the very last day. I don't know, is
Mm,
it April 2026? And then he's
mm.
taking his money and get going and leaving this like devastated zone to the Nature Conservancy. And so it's going to be a process to heal this land because bare dirt is every rainstorm it's washing into the creeks and then into the ocean, and we're losing topsoil, and that takes decades to get back.
You got all this going on out there.
There's the alfalfa hay. They're trucking in CO2 emissions from the Central Valley because you can't grow alfalfa on the coast. It's a hot weather plant. And so it's being trucked here, and this is what the organic Jersey dairy cows are eating right now because there's nothing else out there.
And I think it's an important topic to spend some time on because we also hear about, oh, well, we're self-sustaining, and we you should allow us to grow crops here so that we can continue to be locally sourced and everything's done right here. No, it's trucked in, and it's trucked in by the ton, and it's trucked in daily. And if you look at the ground, what choice do they have? They've abused the land so badly that there isn't another option.
Yeah. The cows looked pretty good, so they're getting enough calories. The cows are okay, but not the land.
Yeah, the cows are doing well enough that by age 3 they can be killed. Good job, ranchers.
Uh,
Environmental destruction zone, says Derek. Paula says, sorry for no questions or comments. I only have
mm.
questions that nobody can give acceptable answers for. Like, why don't more area residents object to this? Why do they continue to support this? Well, I don't actually think that the majority are in favor of it. they are silenced through intimidation. In fact, the polls show that the vast majority of people are against it, but it just doesn't seem to matter. And
Yeah,
Paula,
and I think I mean, I'm from the Bay Area too, and there's a definite, we have a foodie culture,
yeah,
and the propaganda that's been very well written is this is organic, it's local, it's
hmm
sustainable, and
hmm
you go to your little cheese shop and it looks great, but then you go out and you see where the cheese came from, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is not
hmm
ecologically sustainable. And so there's a lot of education to be done in the foodie culture of the Bay Area, I think. So it's a big area. Oh yeah, here's my favorite picture. I can't believe they have this parked on the road. It's almost like a FU to the park visitors. This is a old manure spreader truck where they liquefy the manure in ponds from the Holstein cow dairies, the organic dairies, and then they were spreading it on those dirt patches. Somehow, this is regenerative agriculture, by the way.
right.
You spread manure on the bare dirt, and somehow that's supposed to heal things. And so I don't know, this flat tire, dirt, and they just parked it there like, okay, we're done. This is, I don't think this was a ranch. Like, we're giving up now. We're gonna just have little Jersey cows until we're gone, and we're not doing this anymore. But we're gonna park it here for you park visitors to admire.
Yeah, I would agree with that, except that that's not really new. These ranches have looked like
Okay.
junkyards and abandoned vehicle lots, but it does raise a very interesting question. Are they going to pull a Kevin Lunny and just leave all their debris behind, and the Park Service is going to pick up the bill, which means that we're going to pick up the bill of the cleanup? It's
Yeah, and I wasn't part of the settlement agreement. I wish we didn't have a settlement agreement at all. I wish we had, kept on and gotten all the cows out. But it is what it is. We had a lot of politicians pushing things and a lot of complicated coalition. Congress was watching. So we have what we have. And it's not very transparent at the moment who's going to pay for what. Maybe the Nature Conservancy will help fund the cleanup of these really dirty ranches that I can't believe are on a national park unit.
I mean, okay, so the Nature Conservancy pays for it. I've just got to ask, in the name of accountability, why aren't the people who caused the mess and getting paid millions of dollars responsible for it?
They were just leasing to begin with. So we should ask the Park Service. But then again, yeah, that comes back to us, the taxpayer.
Derek asks or says, grass fed doesn't mean grass grown on the local lands, just means grass grown somewhere. I'll go further. It doesn't even mean grass. It's a complete and utter rubbish. It's complete rubbish. Every product that I see in the store now says grass fed overnight. I Come on, people. There's warning signs that it's just not true. Paula says, yes, I'm familiar with political, social, and marketing coercion, living in Sonoma County and constantly hearing the fierce objections to any challenge to local agriculture. It's soul numbing. Yeah, humans don't like change. You become attached to something, and the nostalgia sets in, and nature takes a back seat, and so does common sense. Let's get to some positives because you did take a couple of photos of some things that could be considered positive, such as this black-tailed deer that was grazing lightly on something Nutka reed grass, a native.
Exactly. Yeah. So this was a little old growth patch of coastal prairie up by the Chimney Rock parking lot. And I just found it. I'm like, there's another one. There's another relic. And I think cows aren't accessing this area because it's sort of a more public part. And so on this north facing slope, you had Idaho fescue, which is the roots of that native bunch grass, which lives for 100 years, go down 6 feet in the soil, holds the soil together. And this is a Nootka reed grass. Nootka is in Alaska. It goes up the coast to Alaska. And it's
Mm,
this giant, coarse bunch grass. It probably lives 200 years. It's huge. Roots go down again 6 feet. And here's this little black-tailed deer, and it was reaching in and munching on the little green leaves because being perennial, meaning this grass lives year after year, doesn't die, lives
mhm,
100 years or more, it's still green. All the other introduced grasses were dead and dry and so much
mm,
less nutritious. So I thought that was sort of fascinating. Wildlife in a park. And it was interesting too because there were Mediterranean Eurasian grasses in this coastal prairie, but they were completely different species. They
mm,
were late successional. This is called hedgehog dogtail grass. I didn't
mm,
name it. That what you're showing right there in
mhm.
detail, and you don't see that in the grazed pastures. It doesn't like grazing disturbance and heavy
Interesting.
hooves, so it may stay, and maybe you can clip off seed heads and make it less, apparent, but it's interesting that that's a late successional, almost climax introduced annual grass. So again, that's on the steps towards recovery, and there was 0% bare ground. You walked on the
Mm,
prairie and it was spongy. There were
mm.
mosses and lichens and mushrooms, and so this is my goal for everything. But if you put yeah, and here, this is a bunch. You can see this bunch shaped grass, and then it has all the seed stalks coming off. It has fine leaves. This is the Idaho fescue, which is native to some of the mountain ranges in the interior West, but it's a major component of coastal prairie in California, and it loves the fog belt, the immediate cold summer coast. So this is the one that 100-year-old old growth coastal prairie. There's a couple of green leaves in there because
Yeah.
this thing doesn't die back. And so the roots go down. If you try to tug on this thing, and you cannot, you have to get a shovel and spend an hour digging it out because the roots are this fine network that goes deep and holds the soil together.
You and I, on one of our first tours out there together, found something that you had me try and tug on, and it wasn't a chance in hell of it moving. Was that an Idaho fescue? It was huge and green and wonderful, and the ground was spongy, just like you said. And I see some other
Yeah, I
green
think
in
it
here.
was. It was either this one or the, yeah. And this had all these different kinds of wildflowers. At the end of the season, they're, finished, but wild strawberry, California blackberry, yarrow, so moss, there's the moss, there's a little blackberry, strawberry leaf. So it
Hmm.
was very diverse, and we're not having erosion and soil wash into the Pacific Ocean here. So I'm really worried, like you, that we're going to have TNC do targeted grazing and we'll never get to this stage because
Hmm.
these, look at that fine foliage coming out of this bunch growth form
Hmm.
is the ice cream plants to cattle. Cattle like, oh, okay, if you have one of these in a pasture, the cows sniff it out. They go right to this Idaho fescue and just stand there and munch on it until they get to the roots and kill it. And that's what's been happening for decades. Here's a great picture of our group sitting amongst, you can see the bunches, they're clumpy growth of the perennial native bunch grasses, Idaho fescue. And so the cows will pick those out. They'll choose them over the weeds and the bull thistle and like,
Hmm.
oh, this is tasty and it's a little green. And they eliminate it. And that's what's been happening for decades at Point Reyes. So it'll take a decades to get it back, but if we keep pushing the Park Service, I think we can.
I mean, just put yourselves in the position of the cattle. Of course, you're going to choose just about anything over the bull thistle. It's not like mind blowing science that native plants that actually have nutrition are chosen first, whether it's cattle or goats or native ungulates. I mean, of course, the uh, nasty thistles are the last to be chosen. And mixed in here, I see some sort of reeds, some sort of a reed grass there, some long, slender.
Yeah, that looks like Idaho fescue. There, that's the hedgehog dogtail grass with the little bushy tops, seed tops, and that's from Europe.
Right there.
But it's a sensitive Mediterranean annual grass that doesn't like heavy cattle grazing, so you don't see it in that bare dirt pasture.
And here we
And
have,
then the big reed was the one the deer was eating.
and we got the wild strawberry here, and maybe some
Yeah,
maybe some California blackberry.
yes, right.
And I guess I feel like it's worth mentioning that not every perennial is green all year, such as you're showing with the Idaho fescue here, but it is perennial. So it's not like it just goes up in smoke if there's a fire. But I heard you in the video telling the group something
Right.
very interesting about the sensitivity of this plant to being grazed incorrectly. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, again, a deer or an elk coming and taking a bite of this plant and then walking on because that's their grazing style. Elk are very light. They weigh half as much as a cow, 500, 600 pounds. And the long legs, they walk, take a bite, keep walking.
Hmm.
Cows, being domesticated for 10,000 years, are used to, and they're probably in the wild state, aurochs of wild cattle were probably marsh animals. Their longhorn aurochs were in meadows in the forests of Europe and marshes. And then there's a Nile short-horned wild cattle that lived in the Nile marshes in Africa. So they're used to standing there and just eating, eating, eating. They're not really a mobile walking animal, but we force them to be. Bison, much more mobile,
Hmm.
much more wandering, but cattle are sort of like the water buffalo type. They're going to wallow around in green marshes, but we're forcing them to be upland grassland animals, and we have to herd them around. And so they'll just park, a cow will park at this Idaho fescue bunch and graze it down until there's nothing left, and that kills the roots. And this is the interesting thing about fire: a prescribed light fire done in October when it's not hot, um, cooled air temperatures, and you do like a cultural fire with the tribes or prescribed fire, that does not kill the roots. That actually just burns back the bunch on
Hmm.
top. The roots
Mm-hmm.
are fine, and
Mm-hmm.
then it will sprout new leaves. And this attracts the elk. I mean, the elk love to come to wildfire burns, prescribed fire burns, because all the bunch grasses, 2 weeks after the fire, will start growing
Hmm.
new leaves because they have root stores. They store carbohydrates in their deep roots, and they can just flush back up. Now, but cows, for weeks and weeks, months and months, year after year, grazing this grass down, the grass doesn't have a chance to regrow and photosynthesize and put seed heads out because a cow is always coming and munching it, grazing it down. So it kills the grass. A one-time fire every 10 years is beneficial to these grasses, does not kill them.
A one time fire every 10 years is beneficial, but the wrong animals grazing in the wrong way is actually detrimental. And the two different things that I want to reiterate that you mentioned: grazing it the wrong way could mean wiping out the chance of the seeds ever growing or just consuming all the seeds instead of them having a chance to do what they're meant to do. The other one is that, hey, what's happening on top affects what's happening under the surface. If you do too much damage to the
Right.
top, the roots just can't do it on their own, or at least not with this plant.
Right. Exactly.
Let's
Yeah, I mean, we have to take care of the roots in the soil here, so, yeah.
let's Paula says, such a beauty, thank you. Maybe that was for the black-tailed deer, maybe the plant we were talking about earlier. Derek says, asks a good question. Is the alleged reason for the targeted grazing plan just to reduce fire fuel load? Yeah, what is the primary excuse to justify this? Interesting that they only seem concerned with grazing land that contained cattle previously, says a lot. Hmm. What do you think about that?
I think, one is the fire fuel. It's just an easy way to get rid of that biomass on top, but the record
Very
of
briefly.
decision for the, you know, general management plan, yeah, says actually uses the Park Service's decision says conservation grazing will be used, meaning somehow we're going to conserve something with cattle. And so they actually think it's more than just getting rid of fuel. They're going to restore bunch grasses with cows. I don't know. I'd like to see how they're going to do it. I will be watching.
What about they're conserving the history of ranch land? Like, hey, this is
Yeah.
how this is how
Yeah,
bad it
that's
is
it.
with ranches, and it's historic, and therefore we got to keep it going. John Spear
Maybe
says,
that's it.
oh,
We're conserving the historic ranch family lifestyle, but we're not going to restore or conserve coastal prairie. That's for sure.
oh, you know what really pisses me off is that they have the nerve to talk about the tragedy of there being 1% or 2% of historic coastal grasslands or old growth remaining, and yet they're prioritizing keeping something negative and damaging going because it was deemed as historic. I mean, that's more important than bringing back something that's
Right.
on the verge of disappearing forever. It's very upsetting. That it's very upsetting that the people that are supposed to be our friends are behind this. It'd be one thing if it was the people making money off of the destruction, but like these are supposed to be our allies that are promoting this.
Yeah.
John Spears says, aside from this video, what reference sources do you recommend for us to learn about our local coastal prairie ecology? I know one,
I should.
uh, Forgotten
Yeah.
Landscapes,
Well,
your book.
there we go. Yeah. My book is actually going to, A State of Change is going to be in its third edition next year. So it will be
Hmm,
out again. It's out of print. But I should try to compile a list of articles and scientific papers that, maybe I can send it to you, Skylar, and you could, put it out as a
great.
list because you have to sort through the ones that want to use cattle grazing as a definition of how to conserve coastal prairie. Because there's a lot, even UC Davis. Oh yeah, cows. We use cows to manage our coastal prairie. And so there's the literature is fraught with propaganda. The
Mm,
science is
mm,
fraught even
mm.
with propaganda. And so there's not a lot of good resources out there. I mean, I've had to do a lot of deep diving investigations myself and, go out in the land and just get the source material, nature, and study nature to get a lot of my knowledge. But yeah, I'll try to see if there's some non-biased articles out there.
Did you want to say some more about the old growth coastal prairie? I think there's some shots of it in videos, but I just have it in my banners to make sure that we didn't skip over it. I can pull up the videos,
Yeah,
or
no, you did a really good job covering this.
okay.
Yeah, no, we've covered it really well. I mean, just think of a redwood forest compared to a tree farm or a, you know, some sort of like, weedy thing that you kind of, it's going to be there for a while, but you want the redwood forest. So the coastal prairie is the old growth redwood forest of grasslands. And it's going to take a lot of time and patience and pushing the Park Service to do the right thing to get this back. But we have an opportunity now, so let's push it.
We have an opportunity. What will we do with it? Well, Laura, thank you for being here. I'll keep us at a nice tight hour, but I feel like you provided a lot in that hour, and it'll be great to have you on again, especially as we see the changes taking place out there, or as we see changes being prevented from taking place.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you, Skylar, for all the work you've done over the years. It's like you're the one of the best sources actually. So keep doing it.
Oh, thank you. Well, we do have a playlist of Laura doing exactly this, except some of it is her out there in Point Reyes explaining to me and explaining to the camera what you're looking at. And I'll add this to that playlist. Um, the book, The Natural History of Point Reyes, is pretty decent, though I have not finished it yet. Oh, are you familiar?
I have it. I'll have to review again what it says on the coastal prairie. I haven't looked at it in a long time. So yeah, not sure. There's some good sources out there, but then there's some bad sources too. So
Yeah,
beware.
yeah, there sure are. Laura, thank you so much, and look forward to speaking with you again.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for all you do, Skylar. Really good.